I never imagined it would happen to me. To be fair, I don't think anyone ever truly does. We go through life thinking that we're untouchable, that the things we see on TV or read about online can't possibly happen to us. But the moment you start believing you're exempt from life's harshest lessons, that's when reality throws you its cruelest curveball. It began with a simple message from Claire, my wife of 6 years. Nothing extraordinary at first glance. She texted me to say she'd be late for dinner. Just a regular Tuesday, and I was at home, winding down after a long workday. Going to meet a client. Dinner's at 8, so I might be out late, she wrote. Okay, be careful. Love you. I replied, like I always did. We didn't think much of it. Claire was always busy with work, and I was fine with that. She worked in finance, and she was one of those people who gave 110% to everything. It was one of the reasons I admired her. But she was also a person who rarely let work affect her personal life. She never let the stress of the office bleed into our time together, and for the most part, I trusted her. But something happened that night. Something that made me question everything. Around 10:30 p.m., I got a text from Claire. I didn't think much of it at first. She was probably still at the dinner, and it was just a quick check-in. I'm sorry, I'll be much later than expected, she wrote. This meeting is going on longer than I thought. Don't wait up. I stared at the text, feeling a knot form in my stomach. Not because she was going to be late, but because of how cold the message felt. She didn't even say goodnight, didn't leave a single trace of warmth. Just a quick, efficient message that could have been sent to anyone. But I didn't want to overthink it. She was probably stressed. I give her some space. I turned on the TV to distract myself. I was lying there on the couch, mindlessly scrolling through my phone when it hit me, the quietness. The absence of her presence in our apartment. It wasn't just about the text, it was the entire situation. The fact that we hadn't had dinner together in days, that she'd been coming home late every night, always tired, always distracted. I told myself I was imagining things. She's busy, Tom. She's just busy. But then I remembered something. It was something that had been bothering me for weeks, a small detail that kept resurfacing in my mind. Claire had been acting differently lately. She wasn't as attentive. Not like before. She'd forgotten things, small things, at first. Where we'd parked the car, which movie we were supposed to watch that night. Her laughter, which used to come easily, now seemed forced. I told myself it was nothing, that I was just being paranoid. But that night, after receiving that cold message, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling anymore. At 11:45 p.m., I decided to call her. It was strange, but I needed to hear her voice. Just to make sure everything was okay. It rang a few times before going to voicemail. I left a quick message, something along the lines of just checking in. Hope everything's all right. Love you. Another 5 minutes passed. No response. By 12:15 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. Something was wrong. I could feel it. I had to know what was happening, where she was, who she was with. My mind was spinning, and I made a snap decision that I knew would change everything. I booked the next flight out of the country. You might think I was overreacting. Hell, I probably was. But there was something in my gut, some instinct that screamed at me that I needed to do this. I needed to go. I didn't even think about it. No packing. No planning. I grabbed my wallet, grabbed my phone, and drove straight to the airport. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to leave the country. I booked the flight to Madrid. Why Madrid? I didn't know. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had to get far away from everything and everyone that might have the answers I didn't want to hear. While I waited at the gate, I couldn't help but feel the absurdity of it all. Was I really doing this? Was I really running away from my life to chase down something that might not even exist? But no matter how hard I tried to convince myself to stop, I couldn't. My mind was made up. I had to know if my worst fears were true. I boarded the plane in silence, surrounded by strangers who were blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in my mind. I looked out the window as the plane took off, my thoughts racing. Where was Claire? What was going on with her? Who was she with? By the time I landed in Madrid, it was early morning. I was jet-lagged, exhausted, but the strange sense of urgency still hadn't left me. I couldn't explain it. All I knew was that I had to find out what was really going on. I rented a car and drove to the first place I could think of, the restaurant Claire had mentioned before. The one she always talked about with that little twinkle in her eye. The one she said had the best paella in the city. I got there and sat across the street, watching the empty streetlights flicker in the morning fog. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. I just had to see it for myself. It didn't take long. Around 3 a.m., I saw her. Claire walked out of the restaurant, laughing. She wasn't alone. There was a man with her. He was tall, well-dressed, and they shared a laugh before he kissed her on the cheek. The kind of kiss that left a mark. Something intimate. Something that made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't explain. I sat there, frozen, heart pounding, as I watched her leave with him, her arm brushing against his as they walked into the darkness. That was the moment it all hit me. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was a stranger in my own life. I sat there, in the dark, feeling the weight of the moment pressed down on me. I had seen everything I needed to see. Claire, my wife, the woman I thought I knew inside and out, had just walked out of a restaurant with another man. They weren't just talking. They were laughing, comfortable in each other's presence in a way that felt too familiar. The kiss on the cheek wasn't the usual friendly gesture I had seen 100 times between her and her colleagues. This was something more. Something personal. I could feel my pulse in my ears, the blood rushing through my veins, and yet I couldn't move. I just sat there, trying to process what I had just witnessed. The images of them together replayed in my mind, over and over again. Who was that man? Why had she been so distant lately? I had so many questions, but no answers. What made this situation even worse was that Claire had never given me a reason to doubt her. We were married for 6 years, and in that time, she had always been open, honest. Sure, there had been the occasional late night at work, a few missed calls here and there, but nothing like this. She had always reassured me that it was just her job, that it was nothing more than professional commitments. But tonight, everything had changed. I don't know what I was expecting to find when I first decided to fly halfway across the world. Part of me thought I was just being paranoid. But now that I was here, now that I had seen Claire with another man, my doubts were confirmed. And the hardest part? The hardest part was realizing that she had kept this from me, that she was hiding it. The man with her wasn't some random stranger. No, there was a familiarity there. They were too comfortable with each other, too at ease. The way they stood close, the way they shared a laugh that didn't feel forced. I had never seen her like that with anyone before, certainly not with a colleague or a friend. I had no idea what to do next. I couldn't just walk up to her and ask, "Hey, Claire, what's going on with you and this guy?" It wasn't that simple. She would have denied it, of course. She would have said something about business, or how he was just a friend. But I knew better now. I needed to find out the truth. But the truth was something I wasn't sure I was ready for. As I sat there, watching them talk for a few more minutes before finally parting ways, I felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over me. How long had this been going on? Was I just too naive to see it? Was I blind to the signs that were so obviously there, right in front of me? The man kissed her on the cheek one last time, then disappeared down the street. Claire lingered for a moment before turning back toward the restaurant. I knew I should follow her, confront her. But instead, I sat there, frozen, unable to make a move. I had come all this way, but now that I was face to face with the truth, I was paralyzed. Part of me wanted to run after her, to demand answers. But another part of me just wanted to go home, to pretend I hadn't seen what I had. It felt like hours before I finally moved. I stood up, wiped the sweat from my palms, and walked to my car. I didn't even know what I was going to do next. I had no plan. I didn't know where Claire was going, or if she'd even come back to the hotel. The only thing I knew for sure was that I couldn't go back to the way things were. Not anymore. I couldn't unsee what I had just seen. And no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, no matter how much I wanted to go back to pretending everything was fine, I knew that I couldn't. This was just the beginning. The drive back to the hotel felt like a blur. I was on autopilot, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Every few seconds, my mind would replay the images of Claire with that man, the way she smiled at him, the kiss on the cheek. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. How could she do this to me? How could she hide something like this for so long? I pulled into the hotel parking lot, barely noticing the valet as I parked the car. I grabbed my things, walked to the elevator, and hit the button for the top floor. It was a nice hotel, not extravagant, but enough to make me feel a little out of place. I had never intended to be here, never planned on being alone in a foreign country, chasing down the lies I never thought I'd be facing. As the elevator doors closed, I found myself staring at my reflection in the polished steel. Who was that guy in the mirror? The guy who was sitting in a hotel room thousands of miles away from home, A man whose whole life had just been turned upside down by a single moment of clarity? I didn't know him anymore. But the worst part was, I wasn't sure I liked him. The room was empty, cold, and impersonal. I threw my bag onto the bed, then walked to the window. I stared out over the city, watching the distant lights flicker as if they had any answers for me. But of course, they didn't. I poured myself a drink, my hand shaking slightly. The whiskey burned as it slid down my throat, but it didn't numb the ache in my chest. I needed to think, but my thoughts were racing too fast. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Claire with that man. Every time I tried to think about the future, I couldn't see anything but questions. What was going on? Was I being foolish? Maybe this was all just one big misunderstanding. Maybe I was wrong about what I saw. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I had seen what I had seen. I wasn't crazy. The next few hours were a blur of restless tossing and turning. I kept checking my phone, hoping Claire would call, or at least send me a message. But nothing came. Not a word. It was as if she had vanished off the face of the earth. I couldn't stand it anymore. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them by sitting in a hotel room, brooding. At 4 a.m., I grabbed my phone and scrolled through the list of contacts, trying to come up with a plan. I didn't want to involve anyone back home just yet. I didn't want to call my family or even my friends. This was something that needed to be handled between Claire and me. I thought about her, thought about how we met, how she made me laugh when I felt down, how we would spend lazy weekends together, watching movies, drinking wine. She used to be everything I wanted. But now, I couldn't help but feel like I was just another pawn in a game I didn't understand. I paced the room, trying to make sense of everything. Should I call her now? Should I confront her over the phone? I could feel my anger bubbling up, but there was also a part of me that still loved her, still wanted to believe that this was all a misunderstanding. I sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the phone in my hand. I thought about the way she kissed me goodbye, the last time I saw her before I left. Had she been lying to me then? Had I missed the signs? How long had this been going on? I didn't have any answers. I just had questions, and with every question, my heart sank lower. I needed to do something. I couldn't let this go unanswered. I couldn't just pretend like everything was fine when I knew deep down that something was terribly wrong. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and left the room. It was time to find Claire. Time to get the answers I deserved. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even have a plan, but I couldn't stay locked in that room for another second. The city outside seemed like a distant dream, but I was too wired to think clearly. I grabbed my jacket, slamming the door behind me, and stepped out into the cool Madrid night. The streets were quiet, save for a few taxis and the occasional pedestrian. I had no idea where Claire would be, but I knew I couldn't sit around and wait for her to come to me. I had to go to her. I didn't want to go back to the restaurant I had seen her leave from earlier. That felt too obvious, too predictable. She would expect me to show up there. No, I needed to think strategically. I needed to find somewhere where I could blend in, where I wouldn't raise suspicion. I walked aimlessly, letting my mind wander. I kept thinking about the way she looked at him, the way she leaned into him, her smile so natural, so easy. It wasn't just some office interaction. There was chemistry there, something I hadn't seen between the two of us in a long time. I turned a corner and found myself in front of a cafe. The warm light spilling from the windows seemed like a beacon, calling to me. I hesitated for a moment, but then I walked in. The place was half empty, with only a few people quietly sipping coffee at the tables. I sat at the counter, ordered a drink, and waited. I needed to think. I needed to plan. But all I could do was replay the scene in my mind. Claire, the man, the kiss. It felt like a punch to the gut. How had everything changed so quickly? The longer I sat there, the more my anger began to bubble up. This wasn't a mistake. I knew that now. It wasn't some innocent dinner or a chance meeting. Claire had made a choice I wasn't a part of. I looked around the cafe, noticing the quiet hum of conversations, the soft clink of cups and saucers. But none of it mattered. I had to find out where she was. I had to confront her. I couldn't be the man who sat by and waited for answers. I needed to take action. As I sat there, lost in thought, I saw something that caught my eye. A man, dressed in a dark jacket, walking briskly down the street, head down. I recognized him instantly. It was the same man, the one I had seen with Claire. He was heading in the direction of the hotel. My heart started pounding. What was he doing here? Why was he going to the hotel? My mind raced, and I stood up abruptly, leaving a few bills on the counter. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was driven by something else now, something primal. The need to know, to understand. I followed him. The streets blurred as I walked faster, keeping a safe distance. My thoughts were spinning, and I tried to quiet them. Was Claire already at the hotel, waiting for him? Was that why she hadn't texted me back? I felt the bile rise in my throat as I thought about it. I followed him around the corner and down a narrow alley. There, tucked away between two buildings, was a nondescript entrance to an apartment building. The man fumbled for his keys, opened the door, and disappeared inside. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. This was the moment when everything could change, the moment when the truth would finally come crashing down. I stood there, frozen, staring at the door. Part of me wanted to run, to get back in the safety of my hotel room where I could pretend none of this was real. But another part of me, the part that was terrified of the truth, yet desperate to know it, urged me forward. I crossed the street, my footsteps almost silent against the pavement. I stopped right in front of the building, looking up at the windows. Was Claire here? Had she been here all along? I didn't know what to do next. Should I knock on the door? Confront him? Confront her? Or should I leave, pretending I didn't see anything? My hand hovered over my phone. The urge to call her, to demand answers, was overwhelming. But I couldn't. Not yet. For the first time in my life, I felt truly powerless. I had always been in control of everything. My career, my home, my relationships. But now, standing in front of that building, I realized I was at the mercy of a truth I wasn't ready to face. I took a deep breath and stepped back, my mind racing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I stood outside that apartment building, my heart thudding in my chest. The man had gone inside. I wasn't sure what I had been expecting. Maybe Claire would be there, maybe she wouldn't. But either way, my whole world had just shifted in the most uncomfortable way possible. Every instinct in me was screaming to walk away, to get back in the car and leave Madrid, pretend I had never seen her with him. But I couldn't do it. Not now. I kept staring at the door, imagining what could be happening behind it. The thought that Claire was inside with him, that she might have been hiding this from me for who knows how long, was unbearable. But the worst part was the overwhelming feeling that I couldn't stop it. I had no idea what to do, no idea how to confront this. I stepped away from the building, my shoes clicking softly on the pavement. I kept moving, trying to shake the anxiety that was creeping over me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, making me jump. I fumbled for it, hoping it was Claire, maybe a text explaining everything. But no, it wasn't her. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Hello. There was a long pause, then a voice I didn't recognize. Tom, it's David. I froze. David. The name hit me like a ton of bricks. David was a colleague of Claire's. Someone she'd mentioned occasionally, but always in passing. He worked at the same firm, but we'd never met. Still, the mere fact that he was calling me now, at this hour, was enough to send a chill down my spine. David? What? What do you want? My voice felt tight, like I was choking on every word. Look, I don't know how to say this, but I think you need to know something. Something about Claire. I felt the blood drain from my face. I wasn't prepared for this. Whatever it was, I wasn't ready for it. I don't know if I should be the one to tell you, but you need to hear it from someone. David continued, his voice tense. Claire, she's been seeing someone. I didn't want to get involved, but I think you deserve to know. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I leaned against the nearest wall, trying to steady myself. What are you talking about? My voice was barely a whisper. David paused, then spoke again. It's not just business, Tom. I know what she's been doing, and I know who she's been with. I don't want to be the one to tell you this, but I can't just stand by and watch. I was silent, struggling to process what he was saying. David knew. He knew everything. And the worst part? He didn't sound like he was doing this out of some misguided sense of justice. It was something else, something that made me feel like a pawn in a game I didn't even know existed. Why are you telling me this? I finally managed to ask, my voice low. Because, David said, his tone a little softer. I think you should confront her. You deserve to hear it from her, not from me. But you need to know that whatever's going on, it's been going on for a while. I felt my grip on the phone tightening. You're saying this has been happening for a while. My voice cracked, the shock starting to settle in. Yes, David replied, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. And I'm sorry. I really am. But I think you need to see it for yourself. I ended the call without saying another word. My mind was spinning. The room around me seemed to fade into a blur. So it was true. Everything I had feared was real. I looked back toward the apartment building. The man, the kiss, David's warning. They were all pieces of a puzzle I had never asked to solve, but now I had no choice but to face. I had to confront Claire. I had to know how deep this went. But how would I ever look her in the eyes again? I walked back to the hotel, my mind racing with everything I had just learned. The call from David echoed in my ears. The words, "She's been seeing someone," replaying over and over again. I couldn't breathe properly, couldn't think straight. The weight of everything that had been building up hit me like a tidal wave. I was suffocating under the realization that my life, my marriage, everything I thought I knew was built on lies. Back in my room, I paced the floor. I couldn't sit still. My phone buzzed again. I grabbed it instinctively, hoping it was Claire. Maybe she had sent a message. Maybe she had finally decided to explain herself. But when I saw the name on the screen, I froze. It was Claire. I hesitated, the phone heavy in my hand. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello." Her voice came through, soft and familiar. "Tom, I'm sorry I haven't texted. I've been so busy with work. I'm almost back to the hotel. I just wanted to check in." I felt a pang of anger stab through me. There she was, acting like everything was fine, as if I didn't know the truth. As if I hadn't just seen her with another man. As if I hadn't just heard from David about what was really going on. I couldn't hold it in any longer. The truth was out, and I wasn't going to pretend anymore. "Claire," I said, my voice cold and steady, "we need to talk." She didn't respond immediately, and for a moment, I thought she hadn't heard me. Then she sighed. "What's going on? Why do you sound like that?" I could feel my heart racing, my blood boiling. "I saw you, Claire. I saw you with him. And I know everything." The line went dead silent. Then, a beat later, Claire's voice came through, shakier than usual. "What are you talking about?" she asked, a forced lightness in her tone. I felt a chill run down my spine. The lie was too obvious, too transparent. She was stalling. I wasn't going to let her. "I know about David," I said, each word cutting through the air. "I know what's been going on. The dinners, the meetings, everything. I'm done pretending, Claire. I've seen enough." For a moment, there was nothing but silence on the other end. I could almost hear her trying to compose herself, trying to figure out how to spin this. But there was no getting out of it. No more excuses. I had caught her in the act. Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter now. "Tom, please. I didn't want this to happen. I never meant for you to find out like this." The words hit me like a slap to the face. "You didn't mean for me to find out?" I repeated, incredulous. "How long has this been going on, Claire? How long have you been hiding this from me?" There was a long pause. Then, finally, she spoke. "A few months. It's not what you think, Tom. It's complicated." "Complicated?" I barked. "You've been seeing him for months, and now you want to tell me it's complicated? Do you think I'm stupid?" Her voice cracked. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never meant to." The words were coming too fast now, her apology sounding more like a plea. I could almost hear her sobbing, but it didn't matter. Nothing mattered. Not when everything had been shattered in a single moment of truth. "Then why?" I asked, my voice shaking now. "Why him? Why this? Why not tell me?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know what happened, Tom. It just happened." I felt a bitter laugh rising in my throat. "It just happened? Is that supposed to make it okay?" "I never wanted to lose you," she said, her voice barely audible. "I was scared. I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't stop it." I closed my eyes, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to fall. The betrayal was suffocating. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted with everything, was standing on the other end of the phone, offering me nothing but empty words and excuses. "Claire," I said, my voice steadier now, "I don't know what we're going to do from here. I don't know if I can forgive you. I need time to think." She cried out, a desperate sound that made me hesitate for a second. "Please, Tom. I love you. Please don't leave me." But the words had already been said. The damage had already been done. I ended the call, my hand trembling as I put the phone down on the table. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, trying to process what had just happened. My whole life, my whole reality, had just been upended. And now, there was no going back. The phone call with Claire left me numb. I hadn't known what to expect, but I sure as hell wasn't prepared for the truth. A few months. That's how long this had been going on. And now, she was pleading for my forgiveness. I couldn't even wrap my head around it. Every word she'd said kept repeating in my mind. I never wanted to hurt you. It just happened. It sounded rehearsed, like she had said it 1,000 times before, not to me, but to herself. I stood up from the bed, pacing the small hotel room. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I needed air. I grabbed my jacket, rushed out the door, and into the cold night. The streets of Madrid looked different now. What had been an unfamiliar city was now just another backdrop to my shattered reality. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. My mind was too clouded, too furious. How had I missed the signs? The late dinners, the work trips, the distance. How had I been so blind? I stopped in front of a bar, half-drunk people laughing inside, unaware of the storm raging inside my head. I didn't want to talk to anyone, but I needed something to numb the pain. I stepped inside and ordered a drink, feeling the burn as it slid down my throat. The alcohol didn't help. It didn't ease the tightness in my chest or calm the pounding in my skull. I just sat there, staring at the glass in front of me, lost in thought. And then I thought about the man. David. He was the key to it all. He was the one who had told me everything. But why? Why had he reached out to me? What was his angle? Was he trying to make things right? Or was he just a part of the game Claire had been playing all along? As I finished my drink, I made up my mind. I had to find David. He was the only one who knew the full story. If I was going to make sense of this, I had to hear it from him. I paid for the drink, left the bar, and flagged a taxi. The whole ride was a blur, my thoughts racing. I didn't know if I was ready to face more of the truth, but I had to. I had to know how deep this had gone. I arrived at the address David had given me. It was a small apartment building in a quiet part of the city. I stood outside for a moment, staring up at the building, trying to gather my thoughts. I wasn't prepared for what I might hear next, but I knew I couldn't go on living in the dark. Not anymore. I stood outside the apartment building, the night air cool against my skin. My mind was racing, a whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and confusion. But there was something else now, something that had settled deep in my chest, a sense of clarity. I couldn't let this destroy me. No matter what Claire had done, no matter how much I felt betrayed, I had the power to choose what came next. I knocked on David's door. It didn't take long for him to answer. He looked surprised, maybe even a little guilty, but there was no turning back now. "Tom," he said, his voice hesitant. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come." I stepped inside, the smell of coffee and something faintly sweet hanging in the air. David motioned for me to sit, and I did, every muscle in my body tense. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you this," David said, his eyes sincere. "But you deserve to know what's really going on. Just tell me everything." I replied, my voice steady. "I need the truth." David paused for a long moment, taking a deep breath. He finally spoke, his words clear and unflinching. "Claire and we've been seeing each other. But it wasn't something I planned, Tom. It just happened. She was never looking to hurt you. It's just that, well, she needed someone. Someone to listen. Someone to understand. And I guess I became that person." His confession hit me harder than I expected. He wasn't denying it. He wasn't trying to justify it. He was just telling me the truth, raw and unfiltered. "And you," I started, my voice low, "you kept this from me too. You're just as much a part of this." David looked down, guilt written across his face. "I am. And I'm sorry. I never meant for things to go this far. But I couldn't sit by and watch you live a lie." The weight of his words settled on me. I wasn't angry at him anymore. The betrayal, the lies, they all came from Claire. I realized then that I was done. Done with the secrets. Done with the pain. I wasn't going to let this define me. I left David's apartment without another word. The cold air hit me as I stepped outside, but for the first time in days, I felt a sense of peace. I had the truth now, and with it, I could move forward. The next day, I boarded a plane back to the States. I didn't call Claire. I didn't send her a message. I just let the silence speak for itself. I had given her enough chances to come clean, to be honest. But she had chosen to lie, to betray me, and now she would have to live with the consequences of her actions. A few weeks later, I received a letter from her. It was short, almost detached, but the words still stung. "I know I've lost you, Tom. I can't undo what I've done. I've made mistakes, and I'll carry them with me for the rest of my life. But I want you to know that I never meant to hurt you. You were always the one I loved. I read the letter once, maybe twice, before I crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. The love I once had for her was gone, replaced by a cold sense of finality. I had learned a harsh lesson. You can never truly know someone. People change, and sometimes they'll take a piece of you with them when they go. But I wasn't going to let it break me. I had learned to stand up for myself, to choose my own happiness, and that was something Claire would never take away from me. As for her, life would catch up. She would have to deal with the emptiness of her choices. I wouldn't be there to witness it. I didn't need to be. The universe has a way of making things right. And in the end, I was at peace. I had chosen my future, one without lies, without betrayal. It wasn't the life I had imagined, but it was mine, and I was going to live it on my terms.